But yeah, I mean, we're talking real life. We're talking to real people about real things, discussing real problems, coming up with real solutions. This is our life. This is my life. This is real life. Well, welcome to another episode of Real Life with Cornelius Lindsay. I have a very special guest here, my friend of, I don't even know how many years, man.
Long time.
It's
man.
been 2000 and It's been a long time, right? It has been a long time. Bishop Antwain Jackson, pastor of the Equation Church in St. Louis, Missouri. Man, Brother Bishop.
Man, it's good to be here.
Brother Bishop.
It's good to be here.
Well, I want to take time. I always get questions from people about going into ministry, especially from young men who say, I don't know what it's like. Or I have people who are telling me I should go into ministry. And you know what that's like?
Yes.
They say, well, people are telling me to go into ministry, but I'm not sure what that means, what my first step should be, what that looks like. So I just want to have a very candid conversation about what that looks like. So before we get into the questions or everything, 'cause I know it's going to be really good, really intense, especially for our listeners. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background.
Well, I'm Antwain Jackson, as you said, from St. Louis, Missouri. I have been in ministry close to 20 years now, man.
Man.
Yeah, young guy, but started really early, 15 years old, starting in ministry. And man, I have seen God just do so many wonderful things in my life and in my ministry in itself. And I'm just really enjoying the journey. Mm-hmm. I'm just in a season of my life where I've determined that I'm going to enjoy ministry. If I'm not going to enjoy it, then I'm not going to do it.
Now, how did you... So you started in ministry at 15.
Yep.
You started pastoring when you were...
I started pastoring when I was 28.
You were 28.
When I became a senior pastor.
Okay.
But I have been shooting pastoral ministry, assistant pastor, youth pastors, associate pastors. So my first pastoral role probably was 2021.
Wow. So let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. You're 15 years old. Mm. What was this transition like? Were you pulled into the system? Because you know it's a system.
Right.
Were you pulled into the system? Was this something that you aspired to get into? Did people come and tell you, Antwain, you a preacher, you need to go preach? Like, to paint that picture for us?
Well, what's really funny about when I got involved in ministry at 15 years old, I actually was not pulled. I'm probably the least likely person to have been in ministry. Mm-hmm. I knew it was a genuine call. But before I gave my life to the Lord, man, I was living with my mother in Toledo, Ohio, and just living the young 13, 14-year-old life. Just finding myself. My mom was out, just kind of living her life, so it gave me a lot of free time to do a lot of bad stuff I shouldn't have did. But the one climax of what I did is I stole her car and tore it up. And after that, she sent me back to St. Louis to be with my father. And so when I came back to St. Louis at 15, my uncle was leading the church, and I literally got saved that year. And I literally just was like, hey, I'm here, and I'm feeling God kind of tug on my heart about serving in ministry. And so the way I actually got involved was through serving. I just started serving my pastor and just helping out in the church. And at that time, the system was, okay, now you're a minister in training.
Right.
And so I just got involved in ministry that way. And probably would just do these little Friday night sermons and stuff like that. But I literally just got involved through serving.
Right. So I guess the question now comes, for the guy who's listening, for the woman who's listening, they're saying, I don't know what the next step is. I know for you, it was you got into it by serving. Is it a one-size-fits-all type of system? Is that how you get into ministry?
I don't think so. I think really it's about principle. And
explain that.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is you need to be sold out to the cause of Christ.
Okay.
You know, number one, like if you're gonna be in ministry, you're serving the cause of Christ. Mm-hmm. You're making Christ known to the world, and so I think that everybody needs to realize that they're actually in ministry, opposed to looking for a title to validate it. So
hold up. Take that back. Take that back. Come on, hit that again.
I think that it's important that everybody in the church realize that they are in ministry.
Wow.
That it's not the title that makes you a minister.
Yeah.
It's actually being a disciple. A disciple is a minister. We proclaim.
Yeah.
We tell.
Yeah.
And so I believe that most of us have to realize that we are in ministry. And then we just have to know the delineation between civic duties of ministry and actually just the discipleship aspect,
right.
of ministry. And so I was really serving from that place. Mm-hmm. I didn't really know that I was going to be, a preacher, teacher, preacher, pastor, bishop. I didn't know that yet. Mm-hmm. But through the gateway of serving, I actually came into a greater understanding of what I was called to do. Mm-hmm. So I would say that the best way to start in ministry is through service. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like God will always call you to serve someone or something when he's trying to develop you. He's going to either put you around somebody or he's going to give you some type of mission. There's going to be something that he's going to call you to develop you.
Wow. Okay. So I love this. You're saying that in this call to ministry, there's going to either be a serving to either something or someone.
Yes.
And for you, your service was to your bishop at the time.
Yep.
What did that process look like for you?
Shoot. Well, that process for me looked like a lot of sacrifice. The best way to say it is like they say in the business world, is an apprenticeship.
Uh-huh.
You aspire to be something, but you know that you have to start at the lowest level.
Right.
I got to drive the caddy. Right. If I don't know how to play golf yet, I'll at least drive the caddy.
Right.
And it's putting yourself around the environment, being immersed in the culture of it, to actually learn the details. And sometimes you just learn by watching.
Right. And
sometimes you get to play. Sometimes you just get to watch other people play.
Right.
And I think that in ministry, in young people that want to go into ministry, I think that they have to have the correct heart posture. They can be gifted, but they have to have the heart posture of a servant.
Wow.
And I'm willing to either drive the cart or play the cart or play golf, but I'm going to always do it with the mentality that it's not about me.
Yeah.
And I think that most people are like, well, how do I get involved in ministry? Do I go get in a preaching class?
Right.
No. You go sit under a preacher.
Right.
That's the best way to do it.
I was sitting down with a group of guys. We were talking about ministry. They asked me about going into ministry. And my saying, I always tell these guys is, ministry is not something you go into, but rather something that grows in you. And if the heart isn't right, because Bishop, I know you've done this too as a pastor.
Yep.
I know I have. I've met a lot of men and a lot of women. They have some amazing giftings, but their character sucks.
Come on.
And they went into ministry for what they could get from it.
Yes.
Rather than going into it with the ideology that I have to sacrifice so much to be able to give to others who I'm going to be ministering to. And I think there's so many times these people they assume I'm going into this to have what I have. So like using your example, the guy will say, well, I'll be willing to drive. I'll be willing to be the caddy. I'll drive the golf cart, but only until I feel like I can now play golf better than you. And when I feel like I can play golf better than you, then I'm going to walk away from the golf cart and walk away from you in general, because I can now assume I don't need your golf cart and I don't need you either. I'll walk away from who God sent me to so that I can go and now buy my own golf cart, play my own game of golf, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep. Well, see, I think that sometimes people also don't realize that you have precedents set throughout Scripture. You have Moses, Joshua, Elijah, Elisha. Uh-huh. You have all of these different precedences that are set that those individuals served into a mantle was passed to them.
Wow.
And they didn't, I guess, define the timeline.
Right.
They didn't define the timeline. It was events that happened. It was transitions that happened that they had to be prepared for.
Right.
And I think that what most people need to do if they're trying to walk into ministry today is they need to just stay in a place of preparation. Because there may be times where, there are those anomalies where the spiritual father may not recognize that, hey, I'm mature now. I can handle greater weight in ministry. But those are few far and in between. If you're really truly serving under a sincere, genuine man or woman of God, at some point they'll start to see you gaining those ministry muscles and give you the opportunity to spread your wings. But you have to be prepared for the opportunity.
Right.
And not tell them, hey, you're ready.
Right.
Because that develops the heart.
So now, for those who are listening, they may say, well, I feel like I'm ready now.
Right.
But I don't feel like my leader thinks that I'm ready.
Right.
And they're in that position. Because I know I was in that position at one time. What does that, how do you walk through something like that, Bishop?
I think it's very simple. I was in the same spot. And what you do is you keep open communication with the leader. See, what the enemy would teach us to do is to isolate and to go maybe talk to somebody else. Oh. What I chose to do was to be upfront. I went to my leader and I was like, I think I'm ready. I feel like God's been dealing with me. Mm-hmm. Here's the confirmations, because out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. Of course, it's dealing with truth.
Right.
But if you feel like God is really truly calling you to something, you should be able to bring your evidence to the table, not just your feelings.
Oh, man.
Most people only bring their feelings to the table. I feel like I'm ready.
Right.
Well, what does that mean?
Right.
If Logan comes up and says, hey, I feel like I want to drive your car, what does that mean?
Right.
Can you bring evidence? Can you bring me your driver's license? Can you bring me where you took the driver's course? Can you bring me where you've taken classes? What books have you read? Mm-hmm. So is it just that you're ready just based on your own merit? Mm-hmm. Or can you just validate? See, it's just making full proof of your ministry. Mm-hmm. And I feel like most legitimate people, most that want to see you succeed, if you can just bring that to the table, even if I may not feel like you're ready, if you have a driver's license, I may not just let you drive my car. Mm-hmm. But I'm not telling you can't drive a car.
Come on. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. And I want to kind of on that same line. Mm-hmm. I want to keep this going here. What about for those people who say, people have been telling me I'm supposed to go into ministry. That means I'm supposed to be a pastor. Help me, Bishop. Listen. Help Bishop. Come on, Bishop. Let's talk about it.
To want to be a pastor without being called to be a pastor is suicide.
Okay, let's talk about this.
And it's not, and you're not going to know that until you've pastored. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You're not going to see those deficiencies until you've actually pastored. Mm-hmm. And so it's not going to be something that you're going to see right off the bat. It's going to be as you've had challenges, emotional challenges, staff challenges, financial challenges, all the above, that you actually see that you need the grace, the call to actually do it. Because it's going to be how you weather those storms that really shows you if you're really truly called. So most oftentimes you don't really know you're called until you look back. Jesus. So most of us are wanting this burning bush experience, and nobody else has had that burning bush experience since Moses, because that was the way God decided to call him. Right. But I feel like for those that feel like, okay, I'm called to ministry, I'm called to be a pastor, you have to realize that a pastor is a shepherd, a pastor is a teacher, and God gives a unique grace to be able to lead other people into His grace. And so I think that to be able to first of all, you're pigeonholing yourself. Because the truth is, if you ask a real pastor, do they really want to do it? Why
you looking at me like that?
Okay. Well, I mean, you can survey.
I know.
If they could be honest.
Yeah.
If they could be honest, they wouldn't want to do it.
Right.
And so that's the first thing you really assess. When you see somebody that's gung-ho about wanting to be a pastor, you can pretty much assume that they haven't had a true encounter.
Right.
Because you're laying down your entire life.
Right.
For Christ and for others.
Right.
You get a liberty and a freedom not being a pastor.
Right.
So that's why most pastors will look at you kind of cross-eyed. Like
why in the world would you want this?
Why would you set yourself up for this?
I can't tell you how many guys who have come to me and said, I believe God's called me to pastor. I look at them, I said, are you sure you answered the wrong phone, the right phone?
Because they may define pastoring as preaching.
Or the stage.
Or the stage.
Is what you're alluding to.
Right. And they don't realize that pastoring is leadership. So you can be a great preacher and have horrible leadership. Uh-huh. So most pastors are great preachers.
Right.
But the reason why they don't see success in their church is because they don't have great leadership. So you can be a great pastor, have the right heart, but if you don't have leadership, you'll still be preaching great messages to nobody.
Right.
or not being able to lead people to change. And so to automatically assume that you are a pastor just to get involved in ministry, it could be a deception. And I would literally like to say, like, wait it out a little bit. Take a little bit of time. Sit under somebody. Go ask the tough questions. Interview other pastors.
Wow.
And really take some time to really seek God about what your genuine call is.
Right.
And then, here's another piece. Most people aren't self-aware. What do I mean? Most people aren't honest with where they're insecure, where they need validation. And so I have found in a generation today where you're insecure and you lack validation, positions like that seem to be what we reach for because you think that's where you're going to get it from. So most people aren't self-aware. So they'll take on more than they can chew to try to get an emotional itch scratched, and not really even see that it's a genuine call.
So they will confuse the call for some type of
with deficiencies.
Jesus. Now, okay. So with that, let's just say that somebody ends up doing that. They confuse the call because they're trying to get something they believe is going to be at the destination when they get there. In the vehicle heading towards that particular destination, now you're starting the church. You're trying to get this stuff going, and you think what you're going to get is at the destination. I mean, have you been around people who've had that, and is there anything that you can kind of explain to the listeners that says, I want to make sure I want to make sure that person won't be me. I won't be in the vehicle going towards a destination of where I'm trying to get to a stage to get something that I don't really know is there.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. I know a few that have started churches and it wasn't genuinely their call. And you think about something like this. People have graces. Like you can be like, man, that person is a teacher,
right?
Because you see the grace on their life, and you see the discipline of it,
right,
in their life. You see what I'm saying? So when we're talking about character, we're talking about disciplines,
right?
You can see that there is a regiment, the way that they think, the way that they actually do life, that speaks to that gift,
right?
And I feel that there are a lot of people that they don't have the grace, they don't have the discipline, or you don't see that being a part of their regiment. So it's kind of like it takes everybody by surprise.
Right.
Because it's not like God does this like Saul into Paul. He still took the very nature of who he was and made him who he wanted him to be.
Right.
It wasn't just this great big, like, I never played a piano. Now God puts this grace on me and now I'm like a grand master pianist.
Right.
I don't see God do that in our lives. It seems like he uses everything in our lives to discipline us and to regiment us to get us to that place of gifting. And I've seen that with pastors. Usually in their life, they're people that are probably a little bit more introverted than people think.
Right.
Because you would expect an extrovert, but the truth is they're a little bit more introverted
like
people.
I am.
Yep.
Yeah, like us.
You know what I'm saying? I can sit in a dark hole and be fine.
Yes.
They're a little bit more introverted. These are highly compassionate people.
Right.
Very compassionate people. So they have a love for people and things that's it's extraordinary. Most people wouldn't care so much. We seem to care more than somebody else would. We have a love for seeing people come into a place where God called them to be. So you see, all of these things have more to do with others than ourselves. So when you see a person that decides they want to run to pastoral ministry and it's all about what they feel like God's called them to do, that's usually the first sign. Because usually pastors care more about others.
Right, exactly.
We are sacrificial lambs.
Right. And on the next episode, I really want to get into, the sacrifice that goes into pastoral ministry, in especially when it comes to church planners. Because I know, I have buddies who, they were given churches. They were put into a $13 million church that had professionals set up. They kind of had some people to help them start with. They have some sermons kind of shot over to them. Yep. They kind of grew up in it. So it's like, you have that. You already have a foundation that's been laid for you. But then when you're trying to build this thing up that you believe, man, God has really given me something. And I think it's something very unique to that.
Yep.
I've heard preachers that have really talked down towards church planners and stuff like that, but I think it's something very unique to what God does in the body when He plants. Like Equation Church, in many ways, although our churches with the Go and Equation, although we differ in some ways, maybe when it comes down to some of the ways that we may do service
stylistically,
stylistically, but still the core is still the same. It's still the core idea of the cause of Christ. But when we look at church planners and we look at people who have gone into ministry in that sense, these are people who truly, as you said, they're truly compassionate about people. They're willing to give up and really sacrifice everything, sacrifice their whole life for it. I mean, you've done that since 15. You've been doing that. Then you started pastoring it. You said 28. Yeah. So I mean, you see the work that goes into this, and it's a very heavy call. I wanna, but before we close this out, for those people who say, you know what, this has been good. This has really been something good that I can really take in and chew on, but I'm still not sure as to what I need to be doing. I feel like I'm called into ministry, but you know what? I'm still not sure. To answer that question, what would you have to say?
Well, the truth is, you will never really always be sure.
Hey, you don't know until you get there.
You don't know until you get there.
That's true.
That's really from experience. Everybody, even myself and those that I've talked to, have all questioned, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Because sometimes we look at ourselves and we look at our insufficiencies, and we look at sometimes a lack of budget, lack of people, and we just, how can you make something out of nothing?
Right.
And think about the will, the creativity, the ingenuity, the organization that is needed to take something that never existed and to make it into something.
Brother. I know.
That is more like God.
Yeah.
Than we can realize. And so if you're still struggling with that, join the club. The truth of the matter is, you won't know until you jump. But the truth is, you can't prepare yourself for the jump too. Okay. Now, how do you prepare yourself for the jump? Because I don't think I was prepared for the jump. Yeah. When I jumped. Well, knowing what I know now, I spent a lot of time with leaders and just really learning. Right. I think that now you have so much access to like podcasts like this, right? That you can actually hear the true mind, and not trying to do some kind of strategy. I also have come to learn, knowing what I know now, I wish that I was a lot more personally healthy. Because I believe that anything that is healthy grows. And if you're the leader and you're the spearhead and you're about to plant this church, then I wish I would have been a lot more emotionally healthy, right? Physically healthy, spiritually healthy. Because it literally takes every ounce of drop of everything in you to plant a local church. Right. From having to find details, to having to register in the state, to set up your 501c3 papers, to ensure that you have a strong board structure. We 20 something years old, and we don't know how to even pick a board. Yeah, that's true. That moves the mission of the church forward. Right. Attorney fees and venue space and equipment. Right. I mean, those are all the outside things, but what about your mission, your vision, your core values, the culture, of the church that you're trying to create? And so you're trying to do all of this, and you still have to live life, manage if you have a family, manage your family, pay your bills. And so I think that when you're personally healthy, I think it's something beautiful grows from a person that really is solid and healthy and focused. Right. And so I think a lot of times as a pastor, as you see that, as I am, you see that that's where my congregation is. Right. And so now I'm starting to see that if I can just set myself in greater health and set myself to be more focused, then that's what I attract. Wow. I can relate so much with that. Because when after I was serving a pastor, and after I left the church, and
And I mean, my wife and I mean, you know the story. We moved to a totally different state. And I thought right off the bat, we're going to open up the church. We're going to get going. Yeah. And I wasn't ready for that. Mm-hmm. And God knew that. And I think that was one of the main reasons why the church, when we started out in Mississippi, God was saying, boy, you're not ready for this. You're not emotionally ready for this. I was still hurt. Yes. I was angry. I was mad. I felt like I was running from things that I needed to confront. There were issues of identity that I still needed to conquer for myself. And there were just things, even spiritually, I had to deal with, just some of the teaching, a lot of things that I felt like I really needed to deal with. So I had to really sit down at the table, and for a year, I did nothing but study the Word of God, pray and fast. And that was hard for me because, and you would understand this, because as an achiever, yes, it's very hard to assume that I'm doing something worthwhile while all I'm doing is really studying, reading, and praying. Because we assume that worthwhile activity means that I'm bringing in a boatload of money or I'm doing something. But I didn't realize that foundation that was set in that year's time, where I felt like God was shoving me in a cave or putting me in a wilderness with Him. That 1 year of time really helped to set up this, what I can now build upon. So I really understand that. So for those who are listening and you're like, well, I don't really understand what I'm going through now, and I feel like God has kind of pushed me into that. I mean, you got two pastors here who are saying, be encouraged in that. Yes. Because he's doing a work in you that will ultimately flow out of you.
Absolutely. You won't understand until you stand under. That's why I said sometimes you just don't know until you're in.
Right. And so many people want that pastoral or that ministry spotlight, because now with the influence of social media and stuff like that, they see the stage. You know, Bishop, they see you when you get up and you preach. Yeah. They see they hear the 45-minute sermon, but they don't understand the 12 hours that went into the preparation. They don't understand the sacrifice that went into that, the emotional things that went into that because you want to make sure what I'm preaching is the right thing. And it's a lot that goes into that, because I'm held to a higher standard than this, and I'm shaping foundations. I can't play around with this. This isn't a sport.
There you go.
That I can throw the ball and oops, somebody else caught it, and then I'm sad for a night, and then tomorrow I'm gonna forget about it. I'm shaping somebody's eternity with this. Absolutely. And this is hard. Well, not their eternity, but you understand. Yep. I'm shaping their mindset, but it's a heavy thing. And people want that spotlight, but what they don't understand is when you step into it, the light does not just shine on the good areas.
It shines on
it exposes the whole thing. And if you don't have that time along with God so he can take out all that junk, you're gonna be in trouble later on.
Yep. That's why you find most of us, and it's not that pastors are antisocial. The truth of the matter is, but you only have so much energy.
Yes.
And you have poured in, and I'm sure if you're a preacher like myself and Cornelius, we pour in our heart, our soul, our intellect. Mm-hmm. So every part of us is invested in one message.
Right.
That we know that 45 minutes of that message, you're only going to retain 12 minutes of.
Come on, Bishop.
So we already know that we've invested ourselves into that message, and we're vulnerable because we're standing on stage, and the number one fear and phobia is public speaking.
Yeah.
And we conquer that fear sometimes 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
With our own personal insecurities. Yeah. We may have body image issues.
Yeah.
I have sometimes a speech issue. Yeah. So sometimes I stutter or I say words I didn't mean to say.
I do too, yeah.
There are times where I know I'm still developing my theology around a particular place. And so sometimes I may still be studying something out. Uh-huh. And so there's a particular principle that I can share, but I'm still trying to figure out the principle and the truth of it itself.
Right.
And so I'm having to be very careful with crafting my words so that I don't set up bad belief systems in people. Plus you have the people element of, I told my church all the time, do you all realize that even as the pastor, church services are grueling because I am the only person in the church that has to stand the entire time. I don't get a bathroom break.
Right.
I don't get to just walk outside and get any fresh air.
Right.
When I walk in that building, I am on from the time I walk in to the time I've greeted and kissed the last baby.
Right.
And so most people don't realize the amount of physical and emotional investment that is involved in just leading a church weekly.
Right.
And those things need to be considered. You know, when you're talking about doing this the rest of your life. I just signed up to give away my weekends the rest of my life.
Right.
Are you willing to pay that kind of price?
And what does that discipline look like in your life in the past? I mean,
Yep.
what have you? I love what you said earlier with the evidence. Do you have the evidence to show in your personal life now that you have enough discipline to do that?
Yep.
Because this isn't I can feel like doing this when I want to. I mean, many times I've told our church here in Atlanta, look, y'all can pick and choose when y'all want to come.
Come on here.
Like we're doing multiple services now. And I had one of our guys. He said, "Do I have to come to all 3 services?" And I thought, hold up, because I don't have an opportunity to ask myself when and where I don't want to come to. As a pastor, I know I have a responsibility to do something, and I know I have to do it. So it's a heavy thing. And Bishop, I appreciate you doing this with me. Would you please help? Would you please stay and help me with another thing? I want to continue this conversation about church planning.
Yeah.
But before we go into the next episode, could you please just share with the people how they can get linked up with you, website, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, well, you can find me on all social medias at Antwain Jackson, ANTWAIN Jackson. I'm actually going to be launching a personal website here soon, so you should be able to find me at AntwainJackson.com. But you can find me right now at EquationChurch.tv and on all socials at Antwain Jackson.
And if you are in St. Louis, you're looking for a church home, Pastor Antwain, he is there at Equation Church. You can go to EquationChurch.tv. You can get linked up with him. Brother, I appreciate it. I really appreciate you being here with me. It's been a wonderful episode. And if you're listening and you want to get in contact with him because you have other questions, please don't hesitate. Reach out to this man. Yeah. He's a very one of the nicest men I've ever met. One of the most straightforward men I've ever met. And I told my wife said something to me. She said, "Babe," she said, "you don't keep friends." And I told her, I said, I don't think it's so much that I don't keep friends. It's so much that, and they'll start to see this in their time of ministry, that people begin to change over time. Yeah. And if you give it time, you'll start to see the chameleon change its colors. And one thing I can say about you, Antwain, is that you've been consistent since the first time I met you, and I appreciate that about you. But please make sure that you check out Antwain. Thank you so much for tuning in with Real Life with Cornelius Lindsay, and we cannot wait for you to tune into the next episode. God bless you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Life with Cornelius Lindsay. Hey, if you get an opportunity, please check out my website, www.corneliuslindsay.com. Until next time, remember, Jesus is Lord. God bless you.